I used to believe that dignity was something you protected by staying quiet, that if you held yourself still enough, the world would eventually recognize your shape without you having to announce it. I raised my daughter that way. Her father left when she was 3, no dramatic exit, just a gradual thinning until he was more rumor than man. I learned to repair faucets at midnight and fill out financial aid forms at 5 a.m. I learned how to sit in school auditoriums alone and clap twice as hard. I learned that pride can exist without witnesses. So when I walked into the ballroom on my daughter's wedding day and saw 300 guests from her fiance's extended, well fed, well connected family, I didn't feel small. I felt steady. The father in law, Richard, was a man who had never needed to steady himself. You could tell by the way he stood, feet planted like the floor belonged to him. During cocktail hour, he shook my hand as if completing a transaction. So, you're the mom, he said warmly, but without curiosity. You did it all on your own. I did, I said. He nodded in a way that sounded like pity. It began during his speech. He was polished, confident, the kind of man who believed the microphone improved him. He spoke about legacy, stability, the kind of foundation every child deserves. He praised his son's upbringing. He described structured holidays, private tutors, the value of two parents in the home. People smiled, glasses lifted. Then he shifted slightly toward my table. And of course, he said with a genial chuckle, we're grateful that Emily managed so well despite circumstances. It takes resilience to come from so little and still land somewhere solid. There was light laughter, some sympathetic, some approving. My daughter's shoulders tightened beside her new husband. I felt the old instinct rise, let it pass. Don't make a scene. This is her day. But he continued. When we first started planning the wedding, he said, I told my wife we'd make sure everything was handled properly. No one should feel overwhelmed by costs beyond their experience. There it was, a narrative assembling itself in real time. That I had struggled, that I needed rescue, that his family completed what I couldn't provide. It wasn't loud humiliation. It was worse. It was erasure. I thought about the years I spent declining promotions because they required relocation. The late nights finishing case reviews after my daughter fell asleep. The weekends I chose not to date because stability felt more important than companionship. I thought about how rarely I talked about my work at home, not because it wasn't important, because I never needed it to define me there. Richard lifted his glass again, to giving our children the structure they didn't always have. Something in me stilled not in retreat, but in clarity. I stood. No scraping chair theatrics, no shaking. Richard, I said. He paused, surprised, but amused. Yes? Do you even know who I am? The room quieted, not dramatically, but noticeably. Conversations thinned. He smiled politely. You're Emily's mother. Yes, I said. I am. And I'm also the senior legal advisor for the Regional Development Board. A few heads turned. I've overseen zoning approvals for every major commercial expansion in this district for the last 8 years. His smile faltered slightly. I believe your company's North River project came through our office 2 years ago. Now the silence was complete. I chaired that review. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was precise. You mentioned financial assistance during wedding planning, I continued. For clarity, I covered my portion in full. The invoices are in my name. I also reviewed the prenuptial agreement your attorneys drafted pro bono, I might add, because I wanted both parties protected fairly. A murmur moved across the room like wind over water. I've never felt overwhelmed by costs beyond my experience, I said gently. I've managed billion-dollar compliance assessments. A wedding budget did not intimidate me. Richard's face didn't redden. It drained. The recalibration in the room was almost physical. He had assumed hierarchy. He had narrated deficit. And now the facts sat between us, immovable. I didn't attack him. I didn't list achievements. I didn't mention the times his company's filings arrived incomplete and were returned for revision. I simply said, I raised my daughter without lack, not of stability, not of discipline, not of love. Whatever structure you believe she was missing, I assure you she was not. I lifted my own glass then. To Emily and Daniel, I said, may you both learn that strength doesn't always introduce itself. And I sat down. No applause followed. No dramatic rescue. The band resumed after an uncomfortable pause. But the room had shifted. People who hadn't looked twice at me earlier now did. Not with awe, just awareness. Richard avoided my table for the rest of dinner. Later, near the hallway outside the ballroom, he approached me alone. His voice was different measured. I wasn't aware of your position, he said. I know, I replied. A beat passed. It wasn't my intention to misrepresent. It wasn't your intention to ask, I said calmly. He nodded. There was no apology performance, no groveling, just a man adjusting to new information. I look forward, I added, to continuing our professional interactions with clarity. That word professional hung there deliberately. He understood. In the months that followed, his company's submissions to the board were meticulous. No assumptions, no shortcuts, no casual familiarity in correspondence. Respect rendered procedural. At home, something else shifted too. A week after the honeymoon, my daughter came by for tea. I didn't know you'd reviewed the prenup, she said quietly. You were busy, I replied. She looked at me for a long moment. Not as her mother, not as the woman who packed lunches and checked homework, as a whole person. I'm proud of you, she said. I smiled, not because I needed it, but because she saw me. I had spent years being underestimated, sometimes by strangers, sometimes by silence, occasionally even by the people closest to me. That night at the wedding wasn't revenge, it was correction. And dignity, I've learned, isn't protected by staying quiet. It's protected by speaking only when the room finally needs to hear you.